When the sun sets, the undead awaken. To slake their hunger, they feed upon the herd of unaware mortals. Right beneath our noses, the kindred clash against their rivals as they vie for control of the city of San Francisco. Are you strong enough to cheat final death and see another night? Vampire the Masquerade Rivals expandable card game from Renegade Game Studios.
Welcome, family, to Vampire Wednesday. As usual, I'm Matt Holland here with a new face. Well, sort of new. Here with Dan Blanchette, who is a designer here at Renegade Games and the lead designer for the upcoming Wolf and the Rat expansion for Vampire Rivals. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Matt. Nice to
How are
be
you
here.
doing tonight?
Doing great.
So you kind of took the lead for this, and you co-designed Rivals and co-developed Rivals, the core game with Matt Hyra, correct?
That's correct.
So this was not your first foray into Vampire Rivals. What other sort of things have you worked on that people are familiar with? You've been with Renegade now for how long?
A couple of years, 1 year so far full time. Before that, I was freelance, and
Okay.
my first published game was with Pladat Games, Abomination: The Heir of Frankenstein,
Cool.
and I have some releases coming up soon with Renegade. Other than these Rivals games.
Awesome. Well, we really glad that you're able to join us tonight and talk about the upcoming expansion. It's a little interesting because these cards are all in the wild, which is, no pun intended given the clans we're talking about, but they were played at Gen Con by some people, and some people got to
So I
take that
heard.
box home. But for those of you who are just tuning into Vampire Wednesday, maybe you weren't so lucky to join us there. We're going to run through the Gangrel pre-constructed deck tonight, talk about who the Gangrel clan is, what they do, how they win, and show off some of the tools in their deck. And Dan's here to be our sort of subject matter expert as the man behind the clan, as we say. Wow, I should stop making puns tonight.
Dan, the man
Uh,
behind the clan. Works.
Awesome. Well, let's, without further ado, jump on into the first card here. We'll start with, actually, no, before the cards. Dan, tell me about the Gangrel.
Who are the Gangrel?
Who are the
Who
Gangrel?
is this
How are
clan?
they different? And what's their thing?
Yeah, well, good questions. This clan actually is very different in how it plays, and even thematically in relationship to a lot of the other clans that we've released so far. This is definitely of a more wild and feral clan. They live on the outskirts of town. They're definitely deeply connected with the animal world, and that's one of the big things that we'll be introducing with this expansion is these new animal cards that they get to play. And they're going to be this as in terms of play style. You're going to do a lot of card cycling with this clan, a lot of going through your deck and cycling out animals, and we'll get into that as we start talking about the cards. Um,
And
but
if I'm correct, there's a lot of these animals have like a detach effect. So you'll
they
put them
do
on, and then you'll I don't want to say throw them away, but they will go off and do a job for you and
absolutely.
then be replaced.
Yeah, they'll have a job to do while they're attached, and then they'll have another job when you choose to detach them. And then your agenda is also kind of based on that system too. So that'll work in your favor in lots of different ways. This claim will also introduce the Protean discipline, which I don't think we've seen up until this point.
Don't think so.
That allows them to like extend their claws and change their shape and do lots of cool things thematically
Okay.
which we'll be able to show on the cards.
Awesome. So a pretty big departure from I mean, really all of these ones we've seen so far have that element of the sort of glamour of, vampirism and the kindred. And these guys are a little bit different, a little bit grittier, maybe.
Yep, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, then let's take a look. You mentioned their agenda. It is Call of the Wild. This is the pre-constructed deck agenda. Call of the Wild, and when you attach an animal to a character in your coterie in the streets who has no animals, you gain one agenda.
Right.
Simple enough.
Simple enough. You have to have animalism, which most of your gangrel vampires will have. And then just as an action, you can attach these animal cards. And as long as you don't already have an animal attached, you get an agenda for that. You do have to be in the streets. So we don't want you to be able to kind of turtle up in your haven and just be able to, build your agenda that way. So you have to kind of expose yourself a bit.
And the animalism, the fact that you have to have animalism, that's just a rule in the rule book, I assume, for
Yeah.
animal cards.
Yeah, it's a rule, it's a discipline. It's also just the nature of this clan. A lot of their abilities reference the animalism. It's how they accomplish what they do. It's how they talk to animals, how they bond with them, how they control them.
So the one thing that stands out to me, since I know you can detach, this is not sort of capped like the Thin Blood Precon recruitment drive.
Mhm.
That caps at 6 agenda because you're only going to be able to recruit 6 vampires.
Right.
This is not so capped, correct?
Not at all. You are capped only in the sense that you're going to have to be able to basically detach and get rid of these animals in order to reattach them if you want to gain that agenda on that specific character.
Yep.
Of course, you can always have tons of characters, but unlike the Thin Bloods, they're not super cheap. So you probably will only have 2 or 3 of these vampires in your clan. So that means you're going to have to cycle through and figure out a way to do that. These agendas are usually designed to get you kind of close to halfway there.
Yes.
So you're still going to have to do other things to get to 13 if that's the way you want to win.
I just think it's interesting that there are some that have a hard cap, and then there are some like Hunt the Hunters, for example, that can continue to score you points throughout.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a nice thing to have, to be like, oh, I could score this this last point with my agenda, whereas when I'm playing Thin Bloods, I have to score that last point somewhere else. That's all.
Yep. And with this, you can build up to some pretty big agenda turns. There's ways to gain actions and ready your characters. And with the detachability of the animals, you can have a pretty big turn, but it takes some build up to get there and a little bit of luck of getting the right cards.
Awesome. Well, let's take a look at where these vampires hang out. The city park.
Yes.
So it's got the usual +1 secrecy and your leader ability. When the leader exhausts, reveal the top card of your library. If it's an animal, draw it. Otherwise, you can leave or discard. I like the choice there. That feels a lot stronger than just discard.
Yeah, this is important because with an agenda like this one, like Call of the Wild, you need to be able to find those animals to begin with. When your deck relies on getting a very specific card, we need to give you ways to try to drill down into your deck and find those cards. And this is one of the ways that we do that.
I also love the evocative art there. And if people who were at Gen Con saw this, we had a plastic splat gloss version, which will be available at other tournaments, but all the eyes are glossy in that, so they stand out against the foliage, and it looks
very cool.
suitably sinister.
I wish I could have seen that.
Oh, don't worry, I'll hook you up. You know the right people, Dan, to get those cards. So yeah, that's pretty easy. It's going to dig in, get you the animal cards, which you'll need to score your points.
Yep.
And then we showed off Tamaska already. We previewed her during Elysium, I believe.
Cool.
I think we showed off Tamaska and General Flint, who we'll get to next week. But tell me about Tamaska. This is the leader in the Gangrel Precon.
She is the one that you get in the Precon. She's probably going to be the one you're going to want to choose in a lot of cases if you're going with this particular play style and this agenda engine. She's obviously a 6 VP character. She has a nice spread of stats there, so she's real good at everything. She has all 3 disciplines: the animalism, fortitude, and protean. Her ability is the first time you attach an animal to this character during your turn, you can ready her and gain an action. So what's great about that is you don't waste her to attach the animal. She gets that animal and then she's ready to go and attack, or maybe detach and add another animal.
And that's why it's only the first time you do it this turn, so you can't just cycle through your whole hand. that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be a broken card.
And it's nice. The leader here, she illustrates exactly what you said about the action advantage, the readying, the ways to get that done. This is an ongoing thing I'll say throughout this whole expansion. I love the art in this. I thought the art in Blood and Alchemy was, we'd stepped it up a little there, but man, definitely. The vampire art in this is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it keeps getting a little better with each release, so hopefully that trend continues.
You guys are doing a great job with that. So, and from here with Trinity, we are into fresh ground that, unless you were at Gen Con or you've been really digging into spoilers, people who were, you have not seen. So Trinity, 5 blood potency, better on the social side, and party ability. Attackers in this party deal +2 damage to antagonists.
Yes.
That seems great.
Yes. Yeah, it's great. So she's good for going up against the SAD soldiers. She'll be good in a lot of other decks as well. Like if you're trying to do Hunt the Hunters or anything where you just want to get a lot of agenda from what's in the streets. Her 2 social is tough to deal with, so, and plus she has animalism, of course, like most of these Gangrel do, and fortitude. So she'll be a good addition. She could even serve as an alternate leader in some decks.
And so she can just straight up pop an SAD
Totally.
every turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, that's an easy drop in to a Hunt the Hunters deck. If you're looking for another option that can reliably take those out without having to use attack cards. I like that one. Draco Warden, this is another 5 here. And exhaust, pay 1 blood, attach an animal from your hand to any character in your coterie. Ignore the normal attach requirements. That does not now trigger your agenda if they're not in the streets, because it's not ignoring the requirement for the agenda, correct?
That's correct. So you will still trigger the agenda as long as you're in the streets. What's great about her is she can attach animals to characters who don't have animalism. So you can you could drop her into your deck with Bruja or some other clans, and you can still have that kind of agenda engine going. And she basically trains the animals to stay with that vampire, thematically. And it doesn't cost an action. You just exhaust her. You do have to pay a blood, so she has a cost, but you don't have to worry about the discipline.
And sorry, my question was that does not get around the requirement to be in the streets in order to score the agenda, correct? Because that's not a requirement to attach the animal. That's a requirement to score the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, that's nice. That's a way to be able to spread out and include some other clans, but still use that starting agenda. I like that one. Summer Moon with a very adorable but also menacing wolf cub, it looks like. At the end of your turn, if this character has 1 or more animal attached, ready them. If 2 or more attached, they also mend a blood. So they can mend at the end of your turn, which is good for defending. Any other particular use case for that?
Well, I mean, just getting her in action, and you can even use other characters to attach to her. I mean, in addition to supporting the agenda, just having anytime you can ready your character and use her again for something else is going to play into a lot of different engines that you might want to build around someone like this. So like her, Tamaska, they all have that ready capability, and there's even some cards that give you that. You'll see a lot of that in this expansion. Just the ability to do more on your turn if you play your cards right, so to speak. And she has that.
And okay, but her ability that'll just help you. That helps her to be around to respond to stuff when it's not your turn, because it triggers at the end of the turn. Or am I
No, you're correct. It's at the end, so she can she'll be ready for blocking, for other types of actions, things of that nature.
So actually, with her and the second vampire we looked at, you could use both of them. Each kill an SAD. With the first go out into the street as a party, Summer attacks, kills an SAD with her 2 social, and then the other one attacks, kills another SAD, and then Summer readies back up. Is alone, no longer in the same party as the other vampire, right? But she's at least able to respond if something happens. That's pretty nasty.
Yeah, especially, and if she stays in her haven, then you don't have to worry about the party thing. She'll still be with the party because everyone there. Yeah, you're right. Though once you're in the street, you still have to separate. So that will minimize her effectiveness as a ready vampire. But if you remain in the haven, then you still gain that advantage.
Cool. And then she has that little kicker in there. If you have 2 or more, you also mend. I like that. And again, like the art in these is just great. So I assume, I mean, I was not super familiar with the World of Darkness, but the tattoos and that sort of look is, and I see a lot of like plaited hair type thing. That's a very common Gangrel trait, I assume.
We give the artists a lot of leeway to interpret those styles. So I don't know if 100% that the specific things you're looking at are for Gangrel, or if it's just something that they took some latitude with, and
I think it works either way.
Yeah, either way.
Lil Fang, Lil Fang's got 4 blood potency, and you can exhaust them and put an animal from your discard pile into your hand. So that's I was wondering.
This is how you're going to cycle.
Some recursion?
Yeah, there's some recursion. This is how you're going to get. There's not a lot of that. We were extra careful with recursion in this game, but in this case, it's kind of necessary for the engine of this agenda to be able to make it work, to be able to bring them back into your hand, and
that's great, and it's a not unreasonable price. You've got to exhaust them, so they're not going to be able to do the other actions, and then Ghost. So there's a lot of social, I feel like, with Gangrel, right? This is the third.
It seems that way. There's probably a slightly more social in their clan. compared to like Nas, who's going to have slightly more physical.
Mhm.
But we do still try to, within that adjustment, we try to balance the three stats. So it's not like it's overwhelming. It might just look at it, look like it. But
Sure.
there's a slight nudge there.
And this one's got double Protean and a nice party ability. So characters with Protean in this party have +1 secrecy in the streets.
Yes.
Notably, that one that can pop the SADs didn't have Protean, correct?
No, that one did not. I don't think.
So he can't just mask her while she's out there murdering all the humans, which thematically makes sense. Lori Swiftfoot is your first 3-coster, I think, standard guard character.
Yep.
But again, Joyce's art is just really, really good. Joyce, I think, is also the one who did the Victor Temple card art, and
Yep.
that one was fantastic. So that's, I think, our 7 vampires, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
And Lori will have her sister, I think, in the crypt pack. We'll check that out later.
Spoilers for a couple weeks from now. I almost put the wrong one up, so I didn't realize there were 2 Swiftfoots.
Yeah.
And then we get into some of the cards in the actual deck. So Fight or Flight, it's an attack and reaction, both
Yes.
mental. I like the versatility already.
Yeah, we have a few of those types of cards in this expansion. So they're interesting. They have an attacker ability and a reaction ability. Sometimes they are the same discipline, sometimes they're not. In this case, they happen to both be mental. So the attacker says if this attack is blocked, negate the target's reaction, if any. So that's pretty powerful if they decide to block. If you're reacting to someone else's attack, you automatically get 1 shield, and then you get additional shield for each fortitude. So that's when you see all those fortitudes on these characters. Like that Lori, I think she had fortitude as a guard. That's useful. And then this does not deal back any damage to the attacker because there's no because the card says otherwise. Basically,
yeah. If not for that last line of text, it would. But
exactly, that's why I wanted to reference that.
And then the when you say the attack is blocked, that is the capital blocked, meaning another character jumps in front of that attack and takes that attack, not just using a reaction to defend or anything. It's
using a reaction is not a block. It's when another vampire exhausts to basically be the new target of the attack.
Nice. I like that. That adds that sort of shell game of, do I block? Is it going to help me? Is it going to hurt me in some way? That's kind of fun. And anything that works both on offense and defense, has an easier time, I think, slotting in. And then we see our first animal, so the alley cat. So not an unhosted, so you're going to exhaust to attach, which makes sense given Tamaska's ability.
Yep. And you have to have animalism. And in this case, you also have to pay 1 blood. Not every animal has a blood payment, but they all require animalism.
Well, and I mean, if you've interacted with cats a lot, the blood price makes sense. Maybe they just don't like me. Attached to the acting character, it has +1 secrecy in the streets. So that's you said the ongoing.
Yes.
For being attached, and then detach, burn target animal or retainer attached to a character in the streets, then burn this card. So this one you won't be recurring, but that's pretty powerful.
You could, if you use this to, exactly. If you can get the detach effect, but then you have to burn the card. So I guess we could have just said burn this card and then burn, the target character.
Yeah, I mean, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Right. Now. When can I do that? Could I do that detach? That's not an action.
These are always done on your own turn unless it's like a defensive thing. Like Mongrel, for example, will have a damage reduction. You could do that off turn, another player's turn. But any of these other ones, you have to do it during the active player's turn.
Okay, so I could not do it if I'm about to get attacked by Lishu, who's got the which one gives her social? I couldn't then use that as a damage reduction to take away her extra social.
Correct.
Okay. My first thought is always like, what weird game breaking or rule breaking way can I use it? And then, Hyra usually tells me that, no, I can't do that. So good to see that part is still here. Animal Dominion, 5 blood potency. So you need a pretty beefy vampire to play it. So you're going to burn X animals from characters in your coterie and or discard from your hand.
Correct.
To deal X physical damage to target character in the streets.
Yeah. So if you have a bunch of animals already attached to your vampires, you can just choose to burn them to generate the physical stat, or you can optionally discard, or a combination of the two. Obviously, if you could discard them, that might be preferable because then you might be able to get them back in your hand if you have a little fan. But if you have them attached, you probably already got the agenda benefit, so it might be okay. I mean, this is the kind of, I think, card you'll use late game after you've built it up and it maybe made it take down the leader, maybe for a game-winning move. It's like it's a big card for a big moment.
That was my exact question. Why does it seem better to discard? But it's because you haven't presumably gotten the agenda for playing them.
Right.
You also haven't benefited from whatever sort of ongoing ability they have. So
Correct.
not
Yeah.
burning them makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
And I think, and now this card reminds me of why we probably didn't say burn on the cat, the alley cat, because then we don't have to worry about triggering those effects when you're playing this card, because you're burning your card, which means you're not activating the detach effect.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you can just ignore that whole section.
That's one of those things where sometimes people will look at someone who's not familiar with the game or the development of the game will look at a card and say like, oh, why is it worded weirdly like that? And then you can go back and it makes sense to us because you thought of this weird edge case where it needs to be worded very delicately, but it's not always clear to someone just coming in. And Bond Famulus?
Your guess is as good as mine. I'll say Famulus.
So this one's unhosted. You're not needing to exhaust. It's an ongoing. You'll exhaust it though. The next animal you play to cost 1 less blood to attach makes sense with some of the animals that we've seen already.
Right.
And if a character spends an action to play it, ready them. That seems great.
It's great. You still need your animalism, obviously, because that's the main requirement for all these animals. But a lot of them have that blood cost, either 1 or 2. Very few of them are free. So this one will save you a lot of blood over the course of the game. And then being able to actually ready your character right after goes back to what I was talking to before, just the ability to get more out of your turn by being able to have that character ready for something else, maybe to do an attack. Instead of wasting, especially if it's Tamaska, like your leader or someone else that you don't want to, stay exhausted.
Well, and I found that exact issue with Thin Bloods playing them at Gen Con, wanting to use things like Far Reach or even just make a boosted attack with a alchemy attached, realizing too late that I have to set that up a turn or even 2 in advance, getting the alchemies on, and then later swapping in Frog and seeing how much faster I was able to pull those things off. This gives you a similar effect where you're going to get the buff and then pop right back up to do something else fun. Earth Meld. This is cool. So kind of buried in the ground there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a Protean discipline to trigger. So attach the acting character. They mend 2 blood. They get +2 secrecy.
Yes, until their next turn. So it's a great defensive card, especially if you feel like you're going to be under attack against an aggro deck or something. You're already wounded. You can kind of heal up and make it a little bit harder for them to take you out, just to kind of get your, basically heal up and come back stronger on your next turn.
Well, and then the +2 secrecy, that's a non-negligible cost, especially if you're already back in your haven.
Right. It'd be great if you can use it on the prince. Unfortunately, you cannot because he always has 0 secrecy. But anyone else, your leader, someone who's like a high value target, this is a great one to use it on.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a great, oh crap card. Like, oh man, like I overextended. I need to do something here, and you just need to be ready in order to play it.
Yeah, it's also kind of proactive. It's like you're probably not going to attack me because it's going to take you a lot of extra cards for intel. Plus, I get to heal up, so you get some value out of your action, even if they choose not to attack you.
Now, I wonder, will there be a way to? My only question is, will there be a way to use it with something like I go out into the streets, I attack something, I'm now exhausted. I need a way to ready in order to play this on them. But that's also not a bad thing because that would be very good.
Yep, and there are ways to do that. Yeah, we'll even get to some of those cards that will allow you to, especially if you have Protean, will allow you to ready back up, and then you can play another card like this.
Nice, and that makes sense. If it's a multiple card sort of thing to do that, makes perfect sense. So Feral Whispers.
Yeah.
You add 3 blood from the general supply to this, and then Animalism at the start of your turn. You may remove 1 blood from this, put an animal from your discard pile to your hand. So this is a limited number of times recursion.
Yes. This is like if you don't have Little Fang, or if you just need to get more cards out, this will give you those options. You don't need Animalism to put this card into play, but by having that Animalism icon before the next sentence, you need to have at least 1 vampire in your coterie who has Animalism to activate this effect. So as long as you have someone out there with Animalism, you can take a blood from this and retrieve an animal out of this card pile.
And the order of all that means that, let's say I play it, my animalism vampires get dropped into torpor, I won't trigger that at all, so I won't have to remove the blood for no value. It'll only happen when I'm getting the value.
You're saying if your only vampire with animalism is in torpor?
Yeah, so I say I played it this turn, and then on your turn you dropped my vampire into torpor.
Yes.
So I don't have any animalism. It's
so
not like I have to still remove the blood and just not benefit. It's just not happening at all.
it's not. You would not be able to activate this card on your turn if you don't have a vampire that's in your coterie. So if he's in torpor, it's like this is shut down.
Yeah, and that's I was just thinking for a second that maybe I still have to remove the blood every time, but I just won't get the
Oh no, it's optional
effect. But yeah,
it says you may remove, so that means you don't have to.
Yeah, makes sense. Mondays.
You might not even have an animal in your discard pile to retrieve, so
Another good reason. And then hiding in plain sight. Now this is one that somewhat unusually, not completely unheard of, but there's a couple cards that are in both precon decks, and isn't this one of them? Or did I?
This one actually, I think is because it requires either obfuscate or protean, and those clans have one or the other. So what's great about this is if you are smart and drafted, recruited only vampires with one or the other of both of these disciplines, then you can basically avoid the SAD as long as you're willing to discard a card and you have this in play. So. But the downside is, because I've seen this many times, if you have like say 2 vampires with protean or obfuscate, and then one who doesn't have either,
then you discard, and it all has to go to the one.
Yeah, so you probably wouldn't discard, right? You'd want to spread that damage out. So you have to be careful with this one, but it can be very powerful if you do it right.
And also, it only works on characters in the streets. So if you have 3 of your vampires in the streets, you discard, and then the poor guy at home gets whacked.
Yeah,
that's going to be a bad thing.
Usually what you'll see is people put this in play when all the vampires have those disciplines, and they just keep their guys in the street. They just keep them out there unless they have a reason not to be, if they're worried about other decks, other players coming after them.
Nice. And that's an ongoing unhosted action. Just discard a card to get that effect.
Right.
I like it. And another animal, this one's the Mongrel.
Yes.
We need to do an alt art here with one of Sarah Erickson's dogs on it or something. The animalism pay 2 blood, so like you said, sometimes the cost is higher. Attach the acting character as an attacker. They deal +1 damage, and then you can detach to prevent 2 physical damage. That also seems fantastic.
Yeah, the passive ability is really great because it's just a damage augmenter. So no matter what damage you're sending to someone, it's
that's what I was going to say. It doesn't matter what ability.
Somehow that dog can help your mental attack. But preventing the damage, it is very specific. It only prevents physical attacks.
I mean, for the mental attack, it's a therapy dog.
There you go.
Physical, he's actually biting them, and for social, it's just like, oh, your puppy, and then you
there you go,
jam him in the ribs. I love it. And then Murder of Crows, another animal.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites.
Okay, how about you read this one then?
This one costs 1 blood to attach if you have animalism. Your party basically has +1 intel versus characters in the streets, which is cool. But what's really cool is the detach effect. Basically, you can go send your crows after someone and basically start picking their blood. You can actually use it to take someone out. If you do that, then you do have to burn this card. And one of the earlier versions of this card didn't have that burn effect, and this is a little bit too good, especially against thin bloods because a lot of small guys out there. It was
lose 1 blood, so there's no stopping it with the thin bloods ability.
This was the bane of thin bloods early on, but then we added the burn part, and that kind of mitigated that. So, but it's still fun. It's still fun because there's no defense against it. It's going to come, and you're going to lose the blood, and that may be just enough to knock you down to wounded. Then we can use something else, like coup de grace, or it could be your last blood.
So my question: the detach there is not an action cost, right?
No, it's never an action. In fact, your vampire can be exhausted, and you can still detach this.
That's what I figured. I could use something that does superficial damage, hit someone for a bunch, drop them to 1, and then
and then send the crow in.
Murder of Crows to put the murder in the card.
Keyword murder.
Yes, I like that because I was actually just looking at. We'll be spoiling this later this month, but the Annabelle card that we designed during Elysium for Vampire Rivals promo card based on the LA by Night character, she deals superficial damage, or she enables increased superficial damage. So, fun combo there if you can use the Murder of Crows to finish them off.
Yeah, very cool.
She might, the character might not love, that's like, oh, we just wounded them really badly, and all of a sudden, Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds happens. Shape of the Beast. What
Yeah.
on earth am I looking at here?
I can't explain the art, but basically, Shape of the Beast is where you can basically take the shape of other things, and thematically, you can basically turn into something else and do a different type of action. So this is one of those cards that if you have Protean, you can actually gain unhosted and even hosted actions if you're willing to pay the blood. So this is a means of increasing your action economy in the game to do other things. And so if you get one or two of these out and you have a Protean focused clan, you can get a lot more of your turn with a card like this as well.
This is the piece I was wondering. Okay, so I'm readying my people. Where am I getting the extra actions from? And yeah, this will cost you an action to get it out.
Yeah, once you get it out,
just feed your big vampires with some of your lesser vampires Protean discipline. Yeah, that's cool. That is a very disturbing creature because I can't quite tell what it is.
Yeah.
We Are Legend. Just straight up action to gain a prestige, draw 2 cards, discarding 1. That's a pretty classic card game function. Draw 2, discard 1 to dig for the pieces that you need.
Right, and this is like a kind of goes into the Gangrel tradition of embellishment and telling big stories, around a fire. They're basically pumping each other up, and just trying to gain notoriety through embellishing their legends and the stories of all their conquests. So
awesome. Beasts of War. So we just have talked about superficial damage regarding Annabelle. Why don't you tell me, if people haven't been paying attention to every stream we've done, what does superficial mean?
It's a keyword meaning that this tag can't reduce a vampire below 1 blood. So even if you do 100 damage to someone, say it was possible, you would not knock them out. They would always have 1 blood. So that's when you can send the Murder of Crows in to finish them off. So this is potentially
combo, potentially.
We often add that to cards like this that have the potential to be pretty high value attack cards that can really do a lot of damage. And this one, for example, +1 damage for each animal in the party. That could be quite a bit of damage plus the inherent 1 of the card. If you're not
and the attribute of the vampire.
Right. If you're not cycling through all your animals and you're actually just attaching them for their benefits and the play cards like this, it's pretty potent.
And then you could still get the kill with Murder of Crows, but that will burn the card, which will reduce your next Beast of War.
By 1, right. So diminishing returns, but it's still probably worth it.
It's also just a great art piece showing all the different animals that we've
I
seen.
know, and then you got the vampire back there saying it's like she's sending them into action.
Feeding Frenzy. So another physical attack. It's 1 damage, but +1 if they're wounded. You brought up the fact that Murder of Crows could drop somebody to wounded potentially.
Yep. This is if the attacker is wounded though. It's like it's like they're really, really thirsty. So they're going extra on this attack. So the +1 damage is for the attacker.
And then if they defeat the target, they will mend 2. And that will work on mortals as well.
Yeah, it's like they're overfeeding as well. So they're getting a little extra out of that.
Nice. Yeah, that's a solid way to take out mortals too.
Like because you don't have to burn them to get the mend effect. You can get the mend effect just by playing this card and then still attach them.
You're right. That's actually even better than I thought.
Yeah.
And then Feral Claw is kind of your lower end attack, it seems.
Yes.
What's aggravated? Aggravated is if it means kills them.
Yeah, it's gonna be like permanent death for the vampire if aggravated is part of their damage. And this is a Protean thing, so this is what I was talking about, where they can extend their claws and their fangs and gives them a little extra attack ability. This has no inherent damage.
Yeah, the other thing with aggravated is it is not blocked by the attribute.
Stats. Yeah, it's not blocked by the stats. So this doesn't give any stats itself or any inherent damage. So you will have to bring that damage yourself. But if you're playing, certain characters with like a 2 physical, then if they have other ways like Mongrel of augmenting that, you could do 3, 4, or 5 damage and have it all be aggravated, by virtue of this card.
Yes. Okay, makes sense. So we got the claws, we got the feral fangs.
The fangs.
Kind of a theme there. This one also triggers off of Protean. This one's got 2 innate damage. It's played face up though, so they can play their reaction knowing that this is what's coming. And +1 for each Protean this character has. We did see a character with 2 Protean, right?
Yep. Ghost had double Protean. Several characters have double disciplines. That's not always coming into effect on cards like this, but this is one of them that has something for that. So you give Ghost this card, you can do some damage.
And is that Ghost in the art? I don't know all the characters well enough yet.
That's actually a little thing. It probably
Okay,
should
that's
have
what
been
I thought.
Ghost. Yeah.
That's all right. They're allowed to do it too.
Yep.
And Hardened Flesh, a nice reaction for both physical and ranged.
Right.
It's got 1 innate and then +1 for each fortitude. So again, we saw that blocker, the guard character with fortitude.
Yeah. There's quite a
useful
bit of
card.
fortitude in this clan, so this is definitely a useful reaction card for them. And it's good
Nice.
against range. There's not a lot of ranged reactions, in rivals to this point. So cards like this, are worth a little extra.
Yes. And we've got one more card in the Gangrel deck here to show off. This is Apex Predator. This is social, which we, I pointed out. There's a bunch of 2 social attackers, 4 blood potency, 2 innate damage. This will put a fear token on the target. If the attacker is your leader, exhaust the target and ready your leader. So they're not going to be. That's actually the perfect example. They can go out, attack, put a fear, do some significant damage, ready, and then you can still play the Earth
Meld, yeah.
Earth Meld,
or like with Tamaska, she can attach an animal and then ready because that's her ability, and then play this to attack someone and then ready again. So.
And if you're fueling her with a couple of those, that ongoing card where you can exhaust people to give actions, that's pretty nasty.
And what's nice is this actually exhausts the target, so the fear token actually matters, because they will not be able to ready their character.
Yes. Well, awesome. This does have a really kind of different feeling playstyle. It does seem pretty aggressive.
It is, and you haven't even seen the Nosferatu yet. This is small potatoes.
I mean, we saw a little bit of this at Gen Con where, that first round of the pre-release, I think it was Gangrel, or maybe it was Nosferatu. Well, one side won pretty overwhelmingly because walking in blind, not knowing what is even potentially in your opponent's hand, there's some pretty nasty attacks and reactions in these 2 decks.
Absolutely.
And the second round was much more even as people said, oh, I know that thing that I did to you last turn, you're going to try and do it to me, and played a little bit more circumspectly. So
yeah, Gangrel definitely has the potential to do some pretty nasty attacks and to be part of an aggro deck, but their agenda kind of also encourages them to not be too aggressive. You're going to want to, if you're trying to like cycle through your animals and attach and detach, there's only so much you can do against your opponents. You need to kind of like focus on, managing your animal kingdom basically. So it's a balance. So it'll just, and I think you'll be encouraged to attack when you need to, but you're also going to kind of just take care of things at home as well. So I think it'll cater to both play styles.
And I like the fact that I could see these guys working with a couple of other existing agendas too. And I always think it's nice when there is the ability to branch out and have multiple paths to victory and build a deck that's not just based around sort of their gimmick or their thematic ability. Well, that is our look at the Gangrel. Folks who have been wondering, hey, when can I pre-order The Wolf and the Rat? The answer is very, very soon. We are going to be launching our EU and UK web stores in the next week or 2. And I want to have pre-orders start everywhere at the same time. And so as soon as we do that, we will have Wolf and the Rat available to pre-order regardless of where you are, which will be a nice change for those of you overseas. So stick around, stay tuned for updates regarding when you can pre-order and get those nifty Tamaska and General Flint alt arts that people got at Gen Con.
They are pretty cool.
Dan, next week we are going to discuss the Nosferatu, which is another very different clan. This time, a very different
probably
look
my
as well.
favorite, if I'm being honest.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So bury the lead there a little bit with Dan being excited to show those off. Dan, thank you so much for joining and talking about Gangrel today. And then we'll have you back next week since this was kind of your baby to talk about Gangrel.
My pleasure.
Sorry, Nosferatu. Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Please join us next week to talk about Nosferatu as we continue to preview the Wolf and the Rat expansion for Vampire Rivals. Until then, have a great time and get out there and play some games.